this is a bit bittersweet as we come to the end. Hey.
Yeah, it is. And even last 2 days, it's just been the same. Like you did one, I did one, and now we're here together today and tomorrow for the last chapters, the book of Mark, which has been great. Thanks for everyone who's been following along. Lots has happened in our world in 30 days. Significant things around the world, and so I probably will never forget doing this journey through Mark, because it will be one of the things that was such a big part of this whole COVID experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And one day I'll tell my grandkids about COVID-19.
Yeah.
How we were all in our homes.
Melissa's made homemade sanitizer.
Really? What goes into homemade sanitizer?
You know, I feel nervous that I'm going to get the recipe wrong, but
we're not endorsing this we
are.
Well, you say
you just have to look into it. I'm actually, what I'm nervous about is like, she made a really nice hand sanitizer and I don't know the ingredients. Like, it smells nice.
Yeah.
And so it's like isopropyl, or like it's like alcohol. You have to have a certain amount of alcohol content. I think it's like at least 70%. It might even be higher.
Yeah.
To make it actually work.
Yeah.
And for hands though. And then some nice, I think there was some bergamot.
What's that? What's bergamot?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what bergamot is, but it's a nice smell.
Is it like
I could imagine for that either you or I could pick some bergamot from one of these plants behind us.
Oh, it's a plant. I'm gonna Google it.
No, I don't know that. I'm just saying that I could imagine.
Bergamot.
Oh wow, I was thinking bergamot, like with an NT.
Bergamot is a fragrant citrus fruit from the tropical Citrus bergamia plant, common throughout the Mediterranean.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So here we are, Mark chapter 15.
Yeah.
Just to retrace the steps, we were talking about how defining the season of life was. I said, I'm going to tell my grandkids about this. And then you said, Melissa made hand sanitizer. And that's, as far as I can tell, that's how we got here.
Well, it's true. But because and she just already started making it. And I started seeing memes about, so like telling your grandkids how you made hand sanitizer.
Right.
You said grandkids. And then I thought of the meme and I thought, actually, I'm living a meme because my wife is making hand sanitizer and we will tell our grandkids about it. But let's go back to where we were. This is a meaningful season of going through the book of Mark, and that's significant because this is paired up with these early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, and these last 2 days are really pull the whole story together.
Yeah. So today we're looking at the death of Jesus, tomorrow the resurrection of Jesus. Now it's interesting if you look at churches, like if there was a symbol for Christian faith, it would be the cross, which is a symbol of death. Jesus is about to die on a cross in Mark's account. And, we comment on an Alpha, but it's worth mentioning again that most people are remembered for the things they do, but Jesus is uniquely also remembered for his death, like how he died, and what happened when he died. And all the gospel writers record the death of Jesus. And all of them are trying to, in different ways, with recording the events that happened, help us understand just the significance of what happened. So today we're really going to zero in on one verse because there's so much that could be said about what did the death of Jesus accomplish. So many things in terms of evil in this world and our relationship with God and what love looks like and what sacrifice looks like and how forgiveness can be expressed. There's so much in there, but we want to zone in on one thing. And the one thing we want to zone in is this idea of the removal of all that separates us from God. And Ben, I was thinking about some of the beautiful pictures. Have you seen like some of the memes going around or stories going around? Maybe it's not a meme, but like an example online, like an elderly man who can't be with his wife because of COVID. Yeah. So he's through the window. Yeah. Have you seen those pictures?
Yeah.
With her through the window.
Or like new babies, like when the elderly want to go visit their new grandkids and they're looking through the window.
There's a partition. They can't be together. And really what we're talking about here in this story that Mark wants us to see is that how Jesus removed a partition between us being in the presence of God, which is really powerful.
Yeah, so all of Mark chapter 15, it deals with the leading up to the actual death, the arrest and death of Jesus as he goes through. He's tortured. They mock him. They put a crown of thorns. You may have seen that symbol of the crown of thorns. They put that on his head to mock him because they're saying, "Oh, you think you're the king? You think you're the expected Messiah?" And they started mocking him. They beat him, and then they lead him out to the cross. And at the cross, crucifixion, which was a Roman form of execution. You've probably heard of electric chair or lethal injection or hanging. Well, crucifixion was that. It's just in line with those. And so many rebels and thieves would be crucified, and they put nails in the hands, nails in the feet, and they hang them on the cross until they die.
Yeah. And I think Mark really does want us to see the physical and emotional pain that Jesus goes through. So there's it starts, we talked about this yesterday, Peter disowns him. There's this scene in Gethsemane of pain. People are mocking him. He's being beaten, and then he's on the cross, and there's there's embarrassment of it. There's the physical torture and pain. And then he says this is verse, if you want to, you could pause and read the whole chapter right now and let it sink in. I find that whenever I read it, if I read it fast, I miss it. But when I read it slow, I find myself going, wow, God, you did that for me, And I feel like, I think I heard somebody say this is like, it's tempting to look away from the cross, but we need to look at the cross. And sometimes I don't want to look at Jesus on the cross. I want to see Jesus off the cross. And that's how he rules and reigns. Today, he's off the cross. Like he's seated at the right hand of the Father. He's in a place of authority. But there's something about drawing our attention to Jesus' physical death on the cross that I think is powerful. And Mark wants us to see exactly what it accomplished. So I'm just going to read actually verse 37 and 38. And it says this. It says, with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. And so it's as if Jesus might even know that he's about to die, and he cries out his last cry. And then it says, this is the first thing that Mark, and Matthew as well, this is the first thing that Mark and Matthew note that happened the moment Jesus died. It says, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. And I just want to unpack what's going on in that one verse, verse 38. And the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom.
Yeah. So in Israel's history, they were told to set up a tabernacle with Moses as they took the people out of Egypt. And then when they set up a temple, they set up parts of the temple, and the innermost part of the temple, which was sometimes referred to as the Holy of Holies, the most holy place. That the idea was that is where the literal presence of God dwelt. And only once a year, the high priest would enter that space and offer a sacrifice, a lamb, a sacrifice, and to atone for the people's sins, all the sin of the nation.
One person, once per year, would go into the very middle, the central court, and it was kind of veiled behind a thick curtain. Like I've heard some sort of commentaries describe it as like a foot thick, and I can't even picture a curtain that thick, but super tall, massive. It's not just like a shower curtain, something like that. This is essentially like a wall. And one person once per year on behalf of all the people of Israel came in with a sacrifice, really acknowledging that our sin separates us from God. And that there's something incompatible about us and God in light of the sin in our life. So he comes in on behalf of people of Israel with a sacrifice into that place. And you know what's interesting? They used to even tie a rope around the high priest for fear that just being in the presence of God, he might die. So the rope would be tied around so they could pull him out. So this is how intense it is. And then check this out. When Jesus dies, and I think it's worth noting, John the Baptist said this about Jesus. He says, hey, there's the Lamb of God, which takes away the sins of the world. Yes. And I think for some people listening, when John the Baptist said that, would have been like, what's he going on about? But then you see Mark kind of picking up this theme, and Matthew does the same thing, where it's like, oh, what Jesus did is he provided a perfect final sacrifice And so there's no need anymore for these walls that separated people. And with the temples, it was all walls. It was all barriers. It's like, depending on like, you know, your ethnicity or even your gender, barrier, and then ritual to get you into the center. And then when Jesus died, all of like that, it broke, which means to say that the presence of God is not hidden behind a curtain anymore, but somehow through the death of Jesus, that is no longer needed. And I think what that means is that now we can actually interact with the presence of God. Everyone's invited.
And it goes both ways. When you think about the temple, the curtain being torn from top to bottom, not bottom to top, top to bottom, ripped down. The temple, the curtain's torn, and it goes both ways in that it's like, oh, now all of us can go in. All of us are welcomed in to that most holy place of experiencing the presence of God. But it also, the other way is God saying, I never was limited to this place. But the symbol of like, God is here. God is so present. And especially in a time like right now, it's like, no, God is present with you right now in the room you're in. Like everywhere within my house, in your house, God is with us, and we have free access to him because of the cross.
Yeah. And that's the great invitation. Sometimes people talk about putting your faith in Jesus. Part of that is putting your faith in the fact that I don't actually have to bring a sacrifice anymore. I don't have to stand as if I'm separated from God. I can put my faith in Jesus, that he paid the debt, that what he did on the cross was enough for my sin. And that now gives me access to the Father. So it's like putting my faith in Jesus is saying that what you did was enough on the cross. Like you did enough. You lived the life I couldn't, and you paid the debt I couldn't afford. So I put my faith in you, that you now give me access. And I love that detail you mentioned from top to bottom. Like it's as if Mark was like, we couldn't have ripped it from the bottom to the top. God had to come down and make a way for us to know him. And I love that. And that's like the picture of the person longing to be with the one they can't touch because of the disease. It's like the glass breaking, the wall breaking down. And the person trying to get to the person that was sick was the Father, was Jesus coming to us. Like the Father sending his son Jesus to come to us. And so even when we were not stretching ourselves out to God, this is a sign that he stretched himself out to us and broke down the barrier and made a way. Most natural response is to reach back out and say, okay, I welcome you to my life. I received that invitation for forgiveness and relationship.
That's the big thing that comes to my mind is, okay, well, so what do I do now? What is my response? And I feel like it is that gratitude and that receiving of, thank you for dying on the cross for me. And I received the power and the gift of what was accomplished on that day. And so we have access. You have access today to God and to his love and presence because he took all of it on the cross for each of us.
Yeah, and tomorrow we get to talk about how death didn't have the final word on Jesus' life.
Amen. All right.
See you tomorrow.